But I don't think this is necessarily the end of this dip, because this dip has only just started. This retrace from pretty much a few days of constant green price action to the upside. Well, we need a bit more time. One day isn't enough, most likely isn't enough. So we need to give Bitcoin a bit more time. This was the monthly order block. This is the price action resistance that I was paying attention to. So coupled with the fear and greed index, we know we're in a greedy territory, something to bear in mind and be wary about. And if we have this order block coming up, if we have this monthly resistance area coming up, if we're getting this fear and greed index signal right over here, and this order block is over here, that's two forms of confirmation that you have to bear in mind, that there's a lot of greed in the market, there's a resistance coming. Let's make that quick calculation that, well, there might be a pullback coming. So that's a very good sort of tool to use in your Confluence along with price action analysis. But the thing I'd like to mention before we close is that I'd think about the fear and greed index reaching this range once again. I'd like it to dip into the range and then see where Bitcoin's price is at. Naturally speaking, this range is going to be a reference point for Bitcoin's price, and it's been that way for many, many months. So I mentioned that we have a few clusters of price action at the range high of this monthly range. So this is the range high, and of course this is the monthly range in of itself. So I just like Bitcoin to have that stability at the range high level. As long as it has that, then that's great, because of course if it does break down into the range, then it's very simple to conceptualize where price could return to. Because if price breaks down from here, then of course the next point of reference would be the range equilibrium, the mid-range for this monthly range, which is confluent with the 200 daily exponential moving average, a vital gauge for investor sentiment, long-term investor sentiment. And as you can see, we're still above the 200 daily EMA, which only means that bullish investors, or at least investors, are bullish on Bitcoin in general anyway. Less than ideal, but at the same time, we've seen this before. We've seen turbulence at these levels before, so we are prepared in terms of this shakeout. The only problem going forward is that, of course, this cluster of price action represents daily candles, so this is going to be a while. If history repeats itself, it doesn't have to be like that, of course. We can see this sort of messy price action for a few weeks when it comes to Ethereum. But the thing is, we have closed below this resistance, so we're seeing rejection right over here. So the fact that Ethereum has candle closed below the 260 level means that this is a very young rejection from this level for Ethereum. And just like we saw in the past right over here, it could get quite messy. So prepare for volatility in any case. So I'm just wondering, is this the end of wave one? And we're going to see a small retrace, potentially right back into this box. In that video, I spoke about a potential wicking price action towards the 0.065 level. That's somewhere I'd potentially see Litecoin BTC retracing towards before moving to the upside once again. That's a potential scenario, because if we think about Litecoin BTC in waves, then this is wave one. This will be the beginning of wave two. So we are currently in wave two, and we have to bear in mind that we've seen this sort of wave structure in the past for Litecoin as well. So if we think about this wave right over here, wave one, wave two, wave three, wave four, and wave five. And the same happened in the next cycle, wave one, wave two, wave three, wave four, and wave five. The over exuberance and that exponential wave five to the upside. So we are most likely seeing the end of wave one right over here, followed by a wave two, which is only just beginning and could see wicking all the way to that 0.065 levels. Hello and welcome back to the Rekt Capital channel, and welcome to today's market update on Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, BTC, and a few other altcoins that we'll be discussing as well. I hope you've had a fantastic weekend, and I hope you're having a fantastic Monday so far as well. Let's dive right into the update because there's a lot to cover. Let's have a look at XBT, BTC on the weekly time frame. So the best thing that has happened with this latest weekly close is that after a prolonged sell side candle last week, that was a lot of sell side pressure, right? but we can't see selling any longer. There's a point where sell side exhaustion starts to become a factor, and when we see a long red candle like this or like this, we tend to see a lot of sell side exhaustion. So at the moment, we've seen a candle close, a weekly candle close above the range equilibrium. So that's the mid range of this monthly range right over here, something I was talking about in that vignette earlier on in the video. So essentially we've closed on the weekly above the range EQ. That's fantastic because that means that we've also closed above on the weekly above the 200 daily EMA, and that's an important long-term gauge of investor sentiment. So if we flick through to the daily time frame for Bitcoin, we've seen a bit of consolidation here, but fundamentally, even though we've closed once below the 200 daily EMA, we've managed to print this sort of uncertainty doji candle right over here. And this tends to be a very good sign of short-term reversals towards the upside or even to the downside, but in this context, it would be to the upside. So this is a good sign because we've seen that candle close, and even though we could have seen some bearish confirmation in the form of a rejection from this 200 daily EMA resistance, we didn't get that bearish confirmation, not yet at least. So today's candle is very positive. That's made its way up above the 200 daily EMA, and I just like to see this 200 daily EMA become a support once again, because fundamentally the fact that we've seen a bounce means that we've just rebounded from the range EQ, and that's fantastic. On the weekly we've seen a close above the range EQ, and of course on the daily we're maintaining the range EQ as a support, so that's really good. So far so good. We've seen this recent bounce in Bitcoin's price action, and this ties in with the bounce in traditional markets as well. So far we have some correlation there, but is that going to be a good thing in the future? That's another topic. That's a separate question that's very interesting to answer. But for Bitcoin, so far so good. I just like it to maintain itself above the range EQ and the 200 daily EMA. In the short term, if this continues to persist, then we might see a revisit to 9,000, 9,100, but at the end of the day, if we see that strong of a bounce, that's quite good. But if we see a very weak bounce going forward, then that will only give us further insight into this range EQ as a support. Is it weak or is it strong? That's something I'm going to be looking for in the short term. But speaking about the Fear and Greed Index, we've seen a rejection from these highs, which is fantastic. This is something I was watching for. I wanted to see the Fear and Greed Index return to this range right over here, because this is generally where we see stability in the market sentiment and the psychology of these investors. So that's a very good sign that we're here, but I'd like to see a resolution, because we've seen this sort of consolidation at these highs for the Fear and Greed Index, and I wouldn't want to see that happen right over here, because that would mean that we'd see further downside, because at the moment we're at the 38 level, so that's a fearful level. But is that enough fear in the market to warrant a good bounce and a good reversal towards the upside? I wouldn't want to see a breakdown like we saw over here from this consolidation, so this is something I'm going to be keeping an eye on, because we are fearful, but maybe not fearful enough. So it's very important to just see, is this confluence, is this range EQ holding, is this daily EMA as a support once again, and what are we going to see here in terms of investor sentiment? These are all things I'll be looking for throughout the week. But having said that, guys, I wanted to quickly announce I have a new webinar live this week on Thursday, March 5th, 7 p.m. UTC. Pre-order discount is $5.99. We'll be talking about the Bitcoin halving and its effect on altcoins. That's going to be a fantastic webinar, because if you enjoyed the Bitcoin halving article and its effect on Bitcoin's price, then you're going to love this one. It's going to be just as detailed, but looking at altcoins. So that's definitely something that is worth checking out. And if you'd like to check it out, reserve your spot today at a pre-order discount of $5.99, and I'll see you there this Thursday. Can't wait for it. But let's dive into the update. Let's dive into Ethereum's price action. This is something we were talking about over the past few weeks as well. We have seen this volatility. Of course, this is the weekly time frame right over here. So we've seen this volatility before. And now we're seeing it again. But the thing that I'd like to draw your attention to is that this level right over here used to be a support. And this is the difference between Bitcoin's price action, because Bitcoin on the weekly closed above the range EQ. So that support is still very much intact. The problem here with Ethereum is that it actually weekly closed below this support. So even though history is repeating itself with the fact that we're seeing volatility at these highs, I'm not too bullish on this candle close below this support. What Ethereum would need to do to win me back as an investor is it would need to return above this support so that it's not a previous resistance, because this could easily turn into a resistance. This could easily just be a relief bounce, which we see a rejection from this level right over here from 225 roughly speaking, and then we see further downside. That's something I wouldn't want to see if I want to be going long. So this is something that's very important, to creep back up this level. Otherwise, it's going to be a resistance, and we could even see further downside. So this is what I'm watching for Ethereum on the weekly, and that's something I'm quite concerned about. In terms of Ethereum's macro price predicament, it still remains the same in the sense that it's still in this weekly macro channel. I'm still macro bullish on Ethereum, but in the short term, it's going to have a bit of volatility. It's going to struggle a bit, and this is something that we're prepared for, right? We knew that this volatility, this sort of downside price action would occur, and indeed it has. So let's see if this level turns into a resistance. And let's move forward with the update. Let's look at Litecoin BTC, because this is a coin that I've been talking about in my previous video when it comes to what coin I'm most bullish on. I am bullish on Litecoin BTC, and I truly believe that we are at the beginning of a cycle. But like I mentioned in the vignette at the beginning of this video, we have to bear in mind these 5-wave structures. And there's a lot of hate about Elliott waves, but at the end of the day, Elliott waves are all about Fibonacci retracements and Fibonacci extensions, and every trader uses these Fibonacci extensions and retracements. So there's no need to hate on Elliott wave as long as it's being used correctly, because the principles towards Elliott waves are principles that traders use all the time. So I use Fibonacci retracements and Fibonacci extensions all the time, and one of these times is now, because essentially speaking, we need to look at where could Litecoin BTC retrace, because this is wave 1, this is the end of wave 1, and we've seen that bearish continuation towards the downside. This is the accumulation box so far. So far so good. This is a 50% retracement from wave 1. So we've only seen a 50% retracement, but at the moment, like I was speaking over the past few weeks, we've reached and wicked into that 0.0065 level, and that's the level I just wanted to hold. But overall, on the macro scale in the weekly chart, I still feel that Litecoin is very much in the beginning of its new market cycle. It is retracing right now because it has that wave 2. Just like we saw a wave 2 over here, we saw that retracement and this retracement before an exponential wave 3 towards the upside, like we saw here, and very similarly to here. So once we bottom on this wave 2, whether that's now or a little bit further down, this is ultimately the historical accumulation box for Litecoin BTC. So far everything seems to be occurring in line with the waves, so I'm not too worried about Litecoin very early on in the cycle so far. So today I'm going to briefly talk about Dogecoin, because as you guys know, if you watch the video about whether Dogecoin can predict alt seasons, spoiler alert, it can, but that's beside the point. If you'd like to check that video, it's in the top right hand corner for you. But what I'd like to briefly mention here is that Dogecoin is printing an ascending triangle, and this is very important because we're seeing this ascending triangle on Ethereum on the weekly chart, as well as on the altcoin market cap weekly chart as well. So we are seeing confluence, and I feel that as long as Dogecoin can hold this higher low, then this triangle is still going to be very much in the works, and once we see a breakout, then that's going to be very positive for altcoin seasons. So that's something I talk about in my other video about Dogecoin, so definitely check that out. So far this higher low is being respected. As long as it continues to do so, that's very positive news for Dogecoin, but also for altcoins going forward. So in this update, I wanted to cover two altcoins that I recently spoke about, both in the live stream, the live altcoin technical analysis session that I covered, or at least had last Thursday. And these two altcoins are the ones that have recently popped. But at the same time, I want to briefly cover these because every update I'll be doing about the crypto market, I'll be talking about two different altcoins chosen by you. So if you want to have your altcoin picks chosen, feel free to leave a comment down below. And of course, I'll be choosing two altcoins per update on YouTube, and the ones that get commented on the most and get the most likes, those are the ones I'm going to be choosing for the updates. So feel free to leave your picks down below. But here's Tezos. This is where I spoke about Tezos at around the 47 mark in my live TA session. So if you'd like to check that TA session out, feel free to do so. What I was speaking about is these three peaks right over here. This is a three-peak formation. I wouldn't call it an ascending, or at least a head and shoulders formation, because this volume profile doesn't necessarily align with the classic head and shoulders bearish reversal formation. This is why I was saying that we might see a breakout from this flagging structure, but straight into this resistance to form that third peak. And as time has progressed, then this is exactly what we got. We got a 6% increase towards the upside ever since we broke out from that flag, but we got that rejection. So that was picture perfect. So far we are seeing these three peaks for Tezos, something that's a little bit worrisome. But also we need to just look at this level, because this is a very important level for directional buyers for Tezos. If we can't break past this level, then this will be a topping out structure. These three peaks will just mean that we might see a return towards this level right over here, this green level, which happens to be confluent with the 4-hour 200 EMA. So that's something to bear in mind. But for the time being, we need to see how Tezos continues to figure at these highs. At the moment, it's had that rejection, and until we break past these highs, I wouldn't be doing or building any long-term positions on Tezos. We need to see that break from here. But of course, if we see further downside, then this is something that needs to hold. It needs to hold, otherwise we'll see this three-peak formation validate, and that could be troublesome for people invested in Tezos going forward. And the other altcoin that I'll be covering today, I spoke about in the live TA session last Thursday, is OGN. We spoke about this ascending triangle right over here, and it was all about this resistance. It was all about breaking past this resistance, which is exactly what we got. 22% breakout towards the upside. That was a fantastic rally, but this is of course the resistance that we're seeing for OGN, and a strong harsh rejection from there. So looking at the 4-hour, we are seeing a lower high here. So OGN doesn't look primed to see any newer highs, at least in the short term, because of this sell side pressure that happens to be weighing down on OGN's price. So I expect some more downside unless this lower high gets breached and that tendency breaks, and we see this resistance have a few 4-hour closes where we see that as a support. I don't see OGN doing any good stuff in the future, in the short term at least. So we'll probably see a retrace, and one of those levels would be potentially around here. But let's see how things develop. We need to see that bearish continuation on OGN, because this is the ascending triangle. Remember, this is the ascending triangle, so a return towards this level just to test that as a new support, that would be bullish. That would be a very good sign for OGN going forward. And having said that, that's about it for today's video. If you like this video, please drop a like, and of course feel free to subscribe for future videos like this in the future. I'm more than happy to be pumping out this content on a daily basis for you guys, as long as you find value in it. So drop a like if you find value in it and you enjoyed the video, and of course subscribe for more videos like this. But don't forget to leave your comments as to which altcoins, which two altcoins would you like me to cover in the next crypto market update, because after all, you decide what I'll be covering in the next video. So leave your picks in the comments below, because coins that are most liked and commented on, they will win. So let me know what you'd like to see charted in the next video. I'll choose two coins, but in the meantime, thanks so much for watching. I'll speak to you in the next video. Speak soon.